Hello guys and welcome to today's video. Well, today we're gonna talk about a modification I did, a cold air intake, and I'm gonna talk about it if it's worth it or not. Because I've read online there's a lot of discussion on it. It's not worth it, it's worth it, it's worth it, depends on, blah blah blah. There are a lot of discussions on the cold air intake, if it's worth it or not. And there are a lot of videos online, and some show different stuff. The other shows that the cold air intake does nothing. Some say it reduces power, and some says it adds power. So I'm gonna talk about my cold air intake install, and I'm gonna talk about of the fact if it's worth it or not. There is not a simple yes or no on this question. It depends on quite a few things actually. If you purely want to install a cold air intake for noticeable more power, then no, it's not worth it. Not at all. If you're not going to do anything extra, a cold air intake alone for the extra power is absolutely not worth it. I didn't feel a major difference in my performance. The car pulled a little bit better, but nothing to say that's worth the price I paid for it. So if you just want a cold air intake for better performance, no, then it's not worth it. But there's always a but. If you want a cold air intake, and it's starting to rain pretty hard, but if you want a cold air intake for better performance with a remap, then absolutely yes, then it's worth it, because the remap will optimize your cold air intake and it will get used better and you will get more power out of your remap. May say if let's say you have a 200 horsepower turbo car and you put a cold air intake in it, it may become a 205 horsepower turbo car, and that's about it. You added 5 horsepower for 400 euros. Okay, imagine you do a remap on the same car without a cold air intake and you get 250 horsepower out of it. Okay, you got 50 horsepower. Imagine you put a cold air intake on it in front, then you may get to 265 horsepower. You see, then your cold air intake becomes worth another 15 horsepower. And then it's worth it, in my opinion. But if you just think, I want a cold air intake without a tune, then it's not worth it, and you just get it. The best thing is to get a tune alone. So yeah, that's the discussion about that. But there's also another reason that you might install a cold air intake, and that is the engine noise. Because as you can hear, my engine sounds way better than it did before. If you just want the cold air intake for the sound, then I think it's worth it, because it really makes a big difference. It really makes your engine sound way more epic. It makes cool noise. And also when I'm standing still and I hit the throttle, you can hear a suction noise. And that's pretty cool actually. It sounds a little bit like a blow-off valve. It's not quite like that, it just has some feeling of it. It's a cool gimmick. So yeah, if you just want a cold air intake for the noise, then I would say yes, it's worth it. So it depends on what you want. Do you just want a cold air intake for power? No, then it's not worth it. Do you want more power out of a tune? Yes, then it's worth it. If you want a cooler sound, well, then it's also worth it, in my opinion. You may think, well, the cold air intake just doesn't make a bloody difference on my car. Then that's for you. But for my car, and I'm gonna demonstrate it in a second, it really makes a very, very big difference. I mean, listen. This is a 1.6 petrol engine, but it sounds For 1.6 it sounds pretty epic. I also have the exhaust to, you know, benefit it, but you know, that's the only thing. Then my other thing I talk about is you can do some other modifications to make the cold air intake flow even better, like a muffler delete, like I did. And with all those modifications, I did remap my car, and I know it sounds pathetic, but that's because I have a small natural aspirated engine. On bigger turbo cars you will have more benefit, but on my car I got an extra 5 horsepower with the cold air intake and the muffler delete. And I know that sounds very, very stupid, but when you only have 115 horsepower, 5 horsepower is actually important enough to spend the cash. And I really feel, you know, a decent difference. I mean, the car now has 130 horsepower compared to the 115 stock, and normally you only get about 125 out of it. So yeah, I really can't complain. The car benefits from the cold air intake, and for me it was definitely worth it. I did not regret it a single time, because the engine sounds more epic and I got more horsepower out with the tune. So for me it was definitely worth it. And for some cars that's also maybe a problem. Some cars don't get the right cooling for the hot air intake, and I had a very lucky that my car actually has an intake, and where I install my cold air intake, that's the cold air intake, it just sits above the intake, and that's perfectly, because that means the intake blows cold air in the cold air intake. That doesn't make sense, but so it's a perfect placement. And on some cars they place a cold air intake, you know, in the engine bay somewhere very deep, and it just doesn't get cold air, and then your cold air intake will be worthless, and you better just use your stock air intake. That's a fact. But in my car the design was perfect for a cold air intake, and I know it's not on every car. Quite a lot of cars more performance wise, and your BMW is also already a little bit more performance wise, but yeah, I mean, some cars I've seen where the airbox is in the back of the car, and you will never get a, you know, good fitment for a cold air intake there. So yeah, I mean, one last pull. I hit the rev limiter. But as you can see, I mean, it's in my opinion, it's definitely worth it. And I got a cheap price on the cold air intake. I found a cheap site where I got it for about 220 euros, I think. So yeah, it's definitely, for me, it was worth it. On some cars it may be a little bit more expensive. That can be the case. I don't know the prices of the other cars, but for me, I think it was definitely worth it, because yeah, the sound is just epic for a 1.6. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a really big fan of it. So yeah, I'm gonna leave the video for where it is. Just one thing, maybe I only gained 5 horsepower out of it, but if you have another car, it could be more or less after June. I know a guy who had a Golf 6 GTI, and he got 10 horsepower above the normal chip tuning because of it. So yeah, like I said, and then I know someone else with a Scirocco R, but he also had a Lowe valve and a catback exhaust, and he gained 40 horsepower more than stage 2 tune should provide. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. It can all depend on very different factors: your engine, where the cold air intake is placed, what kind of cold air intake you take, the tuner. It really depends on quite a few of things. So like I said, there's just not a simple yes or no on this question. So actually this video didn't help at all. So yeah, anyway guys, I hope you did like the video, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Bye.